If you've been coming to the world-famous Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden within the last few years, or if you plan on visiting within the next 5 to 10 years, there's a good chance you're going to see something like this. And for good reason too. In 2018, the zoo launched its $150 million More Home to Roam master plan, and literally have not taken a break since. It started with a new space for roos and little blue penguins, then they added a new entrance, black bears and sea otters are on their way, wolves and giraffes are getting new homes. But the most anticipated project in the zoo's history is the elephant trek. It took $50 million to turn one of the zoo's many parking lots into one of the greatest elephant complexes in America. Elephant Trek opened in 2 phases, a new facility for the giants in 2024, and additional animals that weren't even part of the original plan in 2025, just in time for the park's 150th anniversary. Like every episode, you'll get a full walkthrough of the exhibit, but because this is my hometown zoo, you're also going to learn everything that I know and see everything I have in the archives, which includes a short tour of the past, present, and future of the old Elephant Reserve, a quick look at Elephant Trek's private event space, and go over all of the little details of what this exhibit almost looked like. Before we begin the walkthrough, some of you know the drill. I want to see if all of you can name this species that will appear in the next episode. Elephant Trek is located at the lowest point of this hilly zoo, but I want to start the tour at the highest point near the entrance and take a walk down memory lane. The Cincinnati Zoo has been home to elephants since the early days of its very beginnings, but I want to fast forward to 1906, when guests were welcome to explore the Elephant House, the same one that still stands to this day and hopefully forever. Back then, it was known as the Herbivora House, one of the largest structures in any zoo at the time. Several indoor and outdoor pens were home to elephants, including Gimpy, what would now be considered a very rare African forest elephant, alongside rhinos, hippos, kangaroos, giraffes, and more. Now, to move with the times, the Elephant House featured less and less animals, and in the year 2000, the area was completely reworked, modernized, and reopened as the Vanishing Giants. Also home to giraffes, now okapis, and a total of 3 and occasionally 4 Indian elephants. Sometime around 2007-2008, the area was reworked again. The giraffe and okapi yards were absorbed by the new entrance area. An additional elephant bull exhibit was added. The attraction was renamed the Elephant Reserve and remained almost as is even until the time of this video's release. Now, what I miss about the Elephant Reserve was being able to get so close to the giants no matter where you were, especially when you were inside with them. This was without a doubt the best place to go in the winter. But getting so close was really its only redeeming quality. Space was clearly an issue, and it was time for a change. When the zoo released their master plan, it revealed the future of these elephants and this historic building. One render showed a promise of a second bridge and sidewalk entry into the zoo, which were built. But what hasn't happened yet is this. The words former elephant house obviously suggests elephants wouldn't be here anymore, but these elephant statues kind of contradicted that. Fortunately, things were cleared up a few years later. Another rendering was released, and like the 2018 version, it showed that either the 2 elephant reserve yards would be combined on the building's west side, or at least the larger yard would be expanded, and giraffes would move from the African area and make their return to the Elephant House, and also allegedly bring the flamingos with them. I was told it would be another few years before the Giraffe Tower completes. All that's left now is the empty yard, and depending on when you watch this, you might catch their female black rhino, who was moved over here temporarily from Rhino Reserve before she's transferred to another facility. Now that's everything I have on the old complex. Let's go see what the herd is up to today. Elephant Trek sits on the former site of the zoo's old safari parking lot and entrance. If you use Street View on Google Earth, you can still actually see what everything used to look like. So it's been a lot of fun to compare the old with the new. Our journey will begin up here by the Grove and Mai Tai's Market. Though it's part of Elephant Trek now, most people remember this as the old 4D theater. I remember when it was an event space and a temporary exhibit in 2001. And older generations might remember when this was the zoo's ape house that opened in 1951. In fact, you can still see that apes is still engraved on one of the exterior walls. And until 2020, Sam, the bald eagle, used to be in one of the leftover outdoor cages in between shows in the amphitheater that's right behind this. And fortunately, the cage is not there anymore. Anyways, Mai Tai's Market, named after an elephant that we'll actually meet later, is, in my opinion, the zoo's premier food stop, because it has the two foods that Cincinnati is known for, the amazing Skyline chili and Grater's ice cream. Now, if those aren't your thing, they do have other options in here and across the path in the Grove. But, I'll talk more about the food on my full Cincinnati Zoo breakdown video that should be out in a few months. When I'm on the clock, the most repetitive question I get these days is, where are the elephants? Half the time I'm asked when people just passed the Elephant Trek entrance, and the other half of the time they're asking this while standing within view of this beautiful, completely unmissable archway. Which brings me to the point that the zoo didn't just create amazing animal exhibits for this project, they also did a fantastic job on the ambience. The artwork, the architecture, especially in the picnic pavilion, and of course the Asian waterfall garden that encourages you to step away from the crowds and makes you feel like you left the zoo entirely to learn and discover a peace of mind. Oh, and the other thing that the designers knocked out of the park were the amazing overlooks, and let me tell you, coming here and watching Elephant Trek at sunrise is definitely something else. We're actually standing on the site of the old safari camp, which also had picnic shelters, a carousel, and if you move this little guy right here, it still shows a 360 view of the reindeer pen that was built, taken down, and rebuilt for every Christmas celebration. The original plan showed that this area was almost a large splash pad, but I'm glad they went with the more quiet route. As we follow the waterfall down, it starts to, once again, make you feel like you're now walking in a completely different zoo and honestly, arguably the most beautiful sight in the park. I know that you made it this far in the video to finally see animals, but like you would in a real-life tour, I'm only going to give you a teaser of our finale. And we're going to move on to the left to phase 2 of this project, the Siamang Point. It's a little ways away to our next stop, like less than a minute walk, so the zoo wanted to keep you occupied on your journey. You'll pass a tea garden that highlights the impact of tea farms on elephant habitats and raises awareness about elephant-friendly farming practices to help minimize conflicts, which you can read more about below. Then we have the buzzing bee box, which mimics the sound of bees, showing how farmers in Africa and Asia use beehive fences to keep elephants from raiding their crops. And then there's a perfect photo opportunity that gives you the chance, no, it gives you an excuse to pose and act like a gibbon. The very first species that we're going to talk about is this corner's namesake, the Siamang. Well, this pair, Sebastian and Burback, are new to the zoo. Other individual Siamangs used to be displayed on one of the old Gibbon Islands that opened in 1974. Okay, so the old pair was very vocal. These two, not as much from experience. So I was just thinking to myself the other day how much I miss walking into the zoo in the morning and hearing gibbons from the islands. Not even a few days later, the white-handed gibbons from Jungle Trails moved to the old Siamang home, and they are very vocal. Speaking of islands, the first concept art showed there would be an island exhibit part of Elephant Trek that would take over the old white lion habitat. However, that idea has been completely scrapped, and that will now be a Mexican wolf complex. The following concept art showed that Siamangs in Elephant Trek were then going to live on a different island. and they would be fully enclosed by water that's accessible to the elephants. However, I was told that creating an island habitat from scratch means you might have to create like shade structures that look kind of out of place. You also can't have fake trees so close to the barrier or else they'll jump out, and having their space netted over makes it easier for keeper access. The gibbons can also use the netting to climb, and it also made it easier to design the overhead tunnel. Which leads to the first species that wasn't mentioned in the blueprints until construction was well underway, the Rhinoceros Hornbill, another male and female pair. Males have red eyes, females have bluish-white eyes. Unlike the Siamang pair, these beautiful birds were already at the zoo, and all they had to do was make the flight all the way over from the wings of the world building, where for several years they were kept all indoors and clearly didn't have any space to fly in any way. So I was thrilled to see that they received a better home, where they're not only outside, but can actually move around a lot more. Now, of course, they still capture the crowd's attention, but all of the buzz right now and for the foreseeable future can be found to our right. Here we have a more narrow, open-topped enclosure with an underwater view, a glass view, and one that's unobstructed, and it's home to the reason, well, 6 reasons why this video's release was delayed. A family of Asian small-clawed otters, another animal that we had no idea would be part of Elephant Trek until late in the game. This is either a completely new species to Cincinnati, or they haven't been exhibited here in a very long time as far as I'm aware. They welcomed female Moontie from Cleveland and male Flounder from Columbus, which means both of them have definitely been featured on this channel before, and as babies. When Siamang Point opened, I don't think this pair went on display for long because, as you can clearly see, Moontie gave birth 2 days before Mother's Day this year, and the family was kept behind the scenes for a couple of months, hence why this video was delayed. What makes all of their arrivals extra special is that this not only means the zoo at the moment has 2 otter species, with river otters and wolf woods, but they will have 3 with the upcoming addition of sea otters very soon. There's been a lot of talk of the zoo adding a male babirusa to live with the Asian otters, much like they do in Jacksonville. But I can give 4 reasons why I don't think that's happening anytime soon. This plaza teaches you how otters communicate. The What's for Lunch game asks you to feel hidden objects under these small shelves and guess what animal you are feeling. And as always, the horticulture team knows how to make a gray empty area look like the next best garden you've ever seen. Right now we're standing on another overlook that gives a slice of the main yard, which I promise we'll get to eventually. But at least, you don't have to wait anymore to see elephants because the secondary yard is on our left. Now it doesn't look like a lot is going on. A lot of the budget went to the other yard, and that's okay because one, Magpie, who's been in Cincinnati longer than I've been alive, is over 50 years old and spends most of her time here. So I think they were going for an exhibit with less obstacles and a less varied landscape to accommodate her needs. And reason number 2 why I like this one space is over 2 times bigger than the largest habitat and elephant reserve. So I'll take it. If we look at the first schematics and renders, there were sheep behind the elephants. Turns out initially the zoo was going to expand beyond what you see today and add a mountainous exhibit for not sheep, but allegedly for toucans. But I'm sure maybe the budget got in the way, and according to Google Earth, it looks like people live here. So toucans, no toucans, I'm still happy with how this turned out. Right now, like you would in reality, we're going to do a little bit of backtracking until we get back to this view, but this time, we're going to take a right and once again briefly admire the hard work of the graphics team. Some of my favorite educational signage is scattered on the remaining path. They mention how elephants are landscape engineers, how elephants influence artwork, and how they're portrayed in other cultures. If you want to know how these giants hear and communicate, there's a graphic for that. If you want to know who's who in the herd, here you go. And then that brings us to yet another viewing shelter. It points out all of the other countries where you can find Asian elephants in the wild, paired with some of the many threats that they also face in the wild. And volunteers are encouraged to ask guests to take one of these cards and drop their quote-unquote pledge or promise of how they will be helping these gentle giants or even their local wildlife. And attached to that same shelter is a tall, skinny aviary that pretty much offers a full 360-degree view. On the ground, you should easily spot a pair of Vietnam or Edwards pheasants. They're so endangered that pretty much every source will tell you that they haven't been spotted in the wild since the year 2000. And above the ground, months after Elephant Trek opened, the pheasants were joined by Azure-winged magpies and other local birds that do not belong in the zoo's collection. Now, what does every good elephant complex have and need? A good elephant barn. The Elephant Center is where you can see the pachyderms year-round, even when it's warm out. The actual elephant and keeper space alone is about 26,000 square feet, which is more than double the size of the entire elephant house up the hill. Now, back then, you could only see like 1/3 of the indoor complex, but in Elephant Trek, you can see nearly every square inch, bedroom stalls and everything. And another thing that the animals never really had in the Taj Mahal-inspired building is a pool, a floor that's heated, and a floor that's buried under 4.5 feet under an elephant load of sand. Right here you can learn about the residents' new features, and there's an entire wall that's committed to teaching you all about an elephant's anatomy, including what comes out of them. The upper floor is the aforementioned event center, which obviously you need an invite or be a host to access, but as a famous wizard once said, being me has its privileges. The Overlook is what it's called. It's one of the zoo's 16 private venues where you and up to 140 of your closest friends can have whatever kind of gathering you'd like, which again, you could read more about it below. But I will say that it offers an even more elevated view of the indoor barn, and across from it, a kind of view that you'll only find at a few other places in the nation. Now, the new Elephant Center may not resemble any wonder of the world, but saying that it's an improvement is definitely an understatement. If you want to see the elephants inside but don't want to have to deal with the smell, which I don't mind because it's nostalgic, if you want to avoid this platform, you can still look into the barn from an open outdoor window. According to the first and second plan, this new elephant house was creatively going to be somewhere around here, and it was going to be under the main visitor overlook, so you could literally look over the elephants when they were inside. If it's 33 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, the herds are always given the choice to either stay in here or go outside. For as long as I've been coming here, I've said hello to the same 4 elephants, and to this day, I can still say hi to those same 4 animals. Females Magpie, the oldest, Jati, my favorite, Shotzi, the most famous and city icon, and then Sabu, the breeding bull. For a zoo that's known for its conservation work, it's a little ironic that only 1 elephant has been born in Cincinnati. And that was back in 1998 when Sabu and Jati became first-time parents to Ganesh. Now, I say that, but Sabu just became a dad once again with another one on the way after he had his little stay at the Columbus Zoo. And we all hope that he'll bring some of that success to the Queen City. So that's partially why the zoo doubled their herd size in 2023 and welcomed Shotzi's relative Shira, who was joined by her son Kabir, her daughter Anik, and Anik's son Sanjay. We call them the Irish elephants because they all came from the Dublin Zoo in Ireland. So why get elephants from across the Atlantic? Well, one, Dublin has a lot of proven success with multi-generational herds, and by obtaining elephants from other parts of the world, this way you can keep the elephant population in the US genetically diverse. So this herd is obviously very special for many reasons. Sanjay and Kabir have already made headlines and history. Okay, so let's go back. The reason why I skipped over Ganesh is he passed away from elephant endotheliotropic herpes virus, and long explanation short, It's a virus that plagues young elephants in the wild and in managed care, and it's very deadly. And shortly after their arrival, Kabir and Sanjay tested positive for this infection. According to one of the zoo's signs, they have a lab that was specifically made to fight this. They frequently collect blood samples to keep tabs on their health, and they found that these two young bulls lacked maternal antibodies to fight against this virus, making them especially vulnerable to infection. So, the zoo uses info like this to contribute to global EEHV research to work towards developing a vaccine. In late 2024, Sanjay and Kabir were some of the first patients to take the first of its kind mRNA vaccine made by Baylor College of Medicine and the Houston Zoo, and both have since tested negative for the virus. What you are looking at is what we call the main yard. Like I implied earlier, there's a lot more varied terrain, sand mounds, timed elevated feeders, 5 enrichment trees, actual living trees inside the exhibit, something that you don't see often in elephant habitats. And according to WCPO, underneath these 27 million pounds of sand are tanks that collect up to 1 million gallons of rainwater. The water is then cleaned and reused for elephant treks, irrigation, and most of its water features, like the main yard's waterfall, stream, and 250,000 gallon pool, a pool that's so deep the elephants can submerge themselves with ease. This is approximately 93,000 square feet, and when you combine that number with the other exhibit and the semi-private enclosure off to the right, you get exactly 3.17 acres, making it a top elephant complex in the country based on size. And wow. I know that Elephant Trek was rumored for years, planned for years, and constructed for years, but I never thought I would see the day when my home zoo, a zoo known for being old-fashioned at times, would have something like this, especially in an era where American zoos are giving up on their elephant care because they just can't either afford it anymore or can't live up to today's standards. Fortunately, the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden proved that they can keep up. And hopefully with this amazing exhibit, they will also lead by example for other zoos. Next on Zoo Tours, we're going from one of America's newest exhibits to another new exhibit, arguably the most anticipated project in the last decade that finally allowed this zoo's apes to have access to some fresh air. As usual, please stay tuned for our next adventure. Stay wild because the life is short but sweet for certain, and thank you all for watching Zoo Tours.